Welcome to Hashtag Trending, the weekend edition. We call it Project Synapse, AI in Action. This is episode 5 of our Project Synapse series, recorded meetings of our group where we discuss and explore AI on a more or less practical basis. We're interested in how to make it work in our businesses and in our lives. We've got Marcel Gagne. He's an author, tech enthusiast, and a lot of experience in open source and Linux, and making a deep dive into AI by buying everything in sight. How you doing, Marcel?
That's all true. But yes, I'm doing fine. Thank you. Good morning.
And John Pinard, an IT exec, currently in financial services, but learning to hate technology with the rest of us. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing great. You also, by the way, when you're introducing Marcel, you also forgot to say an all-round nice guy. Oh, wait a second. That's a lie.
I don't think I forgot
Sorry.
that. I don't think that was forgotten. I'm just kidding. We joke. Yeah. Where were we?
I can take it.
Yeah.
We're introducing John. We're introducing John.
Oh, we're introducing John. No, John's a nice guy. I think we'll both agree on that, eh, Marcel? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. John is awesome.
Absolutely.
In fact, of the three of us, John is probably the nicest.
I think we've set a really low bar, though.
I'll pay you later, Marcel.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that we're meeting and we're chatting about these things is we're talking about like the frontiers of computing, artificial intelligence, all this magical stuff that's been dropped into our lap. Actually, just a little over 2 years ago, November 30th, 2022, was the birthday of ChatGPT, when it was sprung onto the world. We didn't bake a cake. We didn't
send a gift. We said we did nothing. We'll have to send one of those belated birthday cards.
Here's the thing, though. Actually, we could probably ask one of the engines how to create a time machine to send the card back a week. And it would probably work. It would probably come up with something.
Before we get into any use cases, though, I do want to talk about what's happening with OpenAI just a little bit, because you sent me a note, Marcel. And I think this does play into the use case piece. I've talked a lot about Sam Altman being may not be the smartest guy in the world in AI. He might be. I don't know. World's greatest promoter. This guy might go down in history second only to Steve Jobs in terms of the ability to promote his technology. They're going to do the 12 days of innovation in Christmas. We did a story on it yesterday for the podcast, and they unveiled a lot of stuff. And they're going to do this every day for the next 12 days. Now, yesterday, and this is where I know this is a competitive thing, they really focused on stuff where companies like Anthropic are eating their lunch. Right? If you listen to every second line was coding, because everybody's in coding knows that Anthropic's Claude is the powerhouse for coding right now. I wrote 3 games in Claude yesterday with 2-line prompts, and they were workable. Yep. They're going after the coding, going after the speed, and 401. And I don't know if I'm saying this right. I did it but it sounds like the highway around Toronto. 401, the 01 from 4. But it is notoriously slow. But I always laugh at this because people are talking about, it's so slow because I have to wait for 10 seconds for it to read the entire internet and do an analysis on this and get back to me. But apparently it did actually have some stumbles. When you'd say hello to it, it would sometimes go away and think and come back and
and they joked about that in the.
Yeah,
I did watch this. I watched the thing yesterday. I just want to. By the way, it's Sam Altmas right now. It's like Christmas, Sam Altmas.
Oh yeah.
Or Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. Oh, that'll be good. I'll use that. I'll use that on Monday. Santa Claus. That's good. I've already had from you, and we'll talk about music and all this stuff. I actually had a song written on Suno. We'll talk about that later. That it's beginning to look a lot like Fishmas. So for fishing for my cybersecurity show. So Santa Claus. This is good. Yeah.
Santa Claus. Yeah, I like that one. I was good with Sam Altmas, but Santa Claus works better. I think.
Yeah, Santa Claus works.
Anyway, the thing about Sam, and in a strange way, there have been a few performers over the years that have pulled this off, where they basically are really straight, really quiet, and their delivery is such that when they actually say something funny, it's freaking hilarious. Yep. And Sam Altman is one of these guys. He's like, yeah, actually, I think that it could be revolutionary and it might destroy the world, but it might also save the world. And he delivers it in a way that is so deadpan and quiet that you watch him almost just for that delivery. It's amazing.
Yeah. The other thing that they did on that was just amazing, and this is the power of demos, but it really was, they took 2 things. One was to talk about the analytic of 401, I think, and their new pro mode which I thought was pro mode, $200 a month, unlimited access to ChatGPT. And I thought, here's one that even Gagne is not going to buy.
No, I'm not buying that one, obviously. But here's the thing. $200 a month sounds like a lot until you consider that you're hiring effectively a room full or a county full of experts in whatever the hell field it is you're doing research in, and they're working for you around the clock, crunching ideas that your people would take 10,000 years to work through, and you're doing all that for $200 a month. Now, I'm not paying that $200 a month, but that's cheap. That is dirt cheap.
But most people, not everybody, but a lot of people that use ChatGPT aren't going to be able to justify $200 a month.
No,
I get what you're saying,
for them.
Marcel, that there are to be specific use cases for the $200
when you talk
a
about
month.
an analytics piece, and if it, I don't know how much they're stretching. It wasn't really clear yesterday. I'd actually going to go back and rewatch it. How much more accuracy and how much more speed, not just power, that they're going to give you with O1.
Yeah.
Because they did a couple of demos, but this one was, and with the youngest looking PhD, they look like babies. I was just going, and I think that was
As
intentional.
we get
Like, these
older,
guys,
they all look younger, Jim.
these guys, I'm
No,
sitting
no,
there.
no.
Hope he doesn't have to change a diaper through this. They've got these guys, and this guy pulls out this crumpled piece of paper with a little diagram on it. Marcel, you're a science fiction fan like me, so you get this. And he's drawn a data center in space.
Yep.
And he draws it out. He puts it into ChatGPT, and it computes what the size of the heat exchanger would have to be for this data center, filling in a whole pile of stuff and a monumental number of formulas. And I got to tell you, I couldn't get the math of that to save my life. But this guy turns out, for being 19 years old, he's also a thermodynamics PhD. So
I know.
I've never felt like I've accomplished so little in my life as watching this guy go through this.
Come on.
Yeah, anyway, so but the point is, and then another one brings out this thing, and I go, oh, don't tell me you're a biology PhD, whatever. But of course, he brings out this thing, and they're starting to talk about molecules and being able to do DNA analysis or whatever it is. But it's an incredible biological problem. And that's where I started to think about, if they really, because they're really pushing the accuracy piece of this, and AWS did the same thing this week. You'll see that AWS did a whole thing on AI, and then Altman comes by and scoops them. But part of AWS's piece was, oh yeah, we've got a new thing to ensure accuracy. And they had PwC stand up and say, we're using this and all that sort of stuff. So everybody who's thought about all the barriers to AI that they can put up, people are tackling those like mad because they want to see this get into action.
One of the issues that everybody's talked or complained about with AI up until now is that the data, there's errors and this and that and the other thing, and that if they're coming back saying that this for $200 a month, you're going to get a more accurate result. When you're doing data analytics and that type of thing, it can easily justify it. Do you pay $200 for accurate information or $25 for inaccurate information?
You remember last week I talked about the issue with doctors where they gave doctors access to ChatGPT, or they had ChatGPT just trying to diagnose stuff. This was 2 years ago. This was pre-GPT 4.0 coming out, that they did this with. And the accuracy of the models was up around 95%. The accuracy of the doctors for diagnosing disease, was around 53%. It was actually lower if the doctors worked with ChatGPT because the doctors didn't trust ChatGPT, so they second-guessed it and would have done better if they'd just gone with it. So let's get this whole accuracy thing down on the table. Yes, hallucinations are real. Sometimes this could be costly and human lives in the balance. I'm willing to accept all that. But if you've got something where its accuracy is substantially higher than the vast majority of humans that you're working with, I think this argument starts to fall apart more and more, and it becomes an ego thing. I can't stand the fact that a machine could outthink me. You know what?
Exactly.
A calculator can outmath me.
And if you really want to get stuck on this, experts are accurate all the time. Read Nudge, the book Nudge. Watch how little it takes to knock somebody off their game. Or Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. And
we talked about this last week, too, that regardless of whether it's a machine or a person, if you're doing something that is so critical that the information is accurate, Jim, if I do something I need to get this out, I need to make sure that it's all accurate, I'm going to pass it over to you and go, hey, Jim, can you take a look at this and make sure that I haven't screwed something up?
And I'm going to put it into
no
a spreadsheet where 80%, or Marcel said 90% of them last week have inaccuracies, 60% of those critical, and they're sitting in your company right now. Which leads me to, I brought a use case, and then I'm going to let you guys rock and roll, because I know you've done way more work on this than I have. But this is my fascinating use case. You know my feeling about spreadsheets. It goes back to the Ronald Reagan days. Yeah, said about drugs. Just say no. Spreadsheets, just say no. Don't run your business on them. And I'm not saying you don't use a spreadsheet for adding or you use a calculator. But when I looked at the spreadsheet that ran our company, my heart sunk. Because I'd spent the first part of my career in insurance and financial services getting all of these actuaries to stop making these undocumented programs that they would run off and do on spreadsheets or on all kinds of different languages that they would come up with. And we'd be making monumental decisions based on these programs. It's okay, I'm a mathematician. Anyway, I digress. But we're back to this spreadsheet.
I agree. You're taking a computer or a program like Excel or something, but you're still putting the human error potential into it, because macros, calculations, all the rest of that go into the spreadsheet are still done by humans.
Yep. And you have these monster spreadsheets, and where I've usually encountered with somebody when something breaks and the error is so obvious that people, and they go, it's in there somewhere. So here's a great use case. We worked through it. I actually have a recording of us working through this, I think, on one. And I'm going to go back and edit that. One of the things we discovered was take a spreadsheet, take it into ChatGPT. It will analyze you, and you ask it. Simple prompts. You don't need to be a prompt expert for this. Ask it to analyze the spreadsheet. It'll come back and tell you what the spreadsheet does in remarkable detail. It'll also talk about the different areas of data in it and what they mean. So there's step one. So just take a simple spreadsheet. Do this today. Take one of those big spreadsheets, put it in there, and ask it what it does. Ask it to clean up the data. You've ever done that? You make a spreadsheet. I've got one, and I did this with one analysis, and I'm famous for this. You start a spreadsheet because you want to keep track of all kinds of things that happen. Partway through the spreadsheet, you change the style or the data that you're doing, or you can't figure out how to get the date in there correctly. You just put it in as text, and you move on. 3 weeks later, this massive spreadsheet, you've got all these stupid errors in it, and you go, why wasn't I better at this? This is why I know. This is why I hate spreadsheets. I've made all the mistakes. Anyway, so ask, you've got your spreadsheet absorbed into the great mind of ChatGPT. Ask it to clean up the data. And it will go back and it will report all of the data issues, formats and things that are wrong, and how to clean them up. And then the best part, Marcel, you probably know how to do a pivot chart, right?
No, I don't. I've stayed away from spreadsheets on purpose for years. I let other people who like spreadsheets work with them.
And that's okay. So, John, do you know how to do a pivot chart?
Yeah, I've done them. I don't use them often, but I've done them before.
Yeah. I every single time somebody says pivot table, I just cringe because I know I've got to go back and read about it, and I'm going to be just forget it. There's somebody here, get one of your staff to do it. Anyway, so it's pivot tables. You don't need them anymore. You ask it to do the analysis, and it'll do an analysis. And never mind some smart kid who does a pivot table, flips it around, the data around 65 ways, and you can't figure out what's going on there. It tells you what the analysis is. It tells you sales are low in the summer, and this correlated with this, and it will go through and find amazing things. Because the thing I also hate about pivot tables is you'll do that. Somebody will do this massive pivot table just to show you that in the summer ice cream sales go up. Thank you very much. So the beauty of ChatGPT is you're not going to offend it. You can ask for non-obvious insights.
If I could just throw a little cybersecurity shot in there. For anybody that's listening, if you're going to be putting any kind of spreadsheet up into ChatGPT, be cautious that you're not putting company confidential information into a version of ChatGPT that is not protected.
This has been a public service announcement by John Pinard. No, absolutely. This is what I mean about baking cybersecurity thinking into
Yes.
what you do. Absolutely. So yeah, you make sure that you've got a paid version. You make sure you go click the little thing that says "Don't learn from this," and if you're using it, or you get Gagne to come in and install your own $35 Linux-driven AI monster that's
You
that
might,
will cost
you might need a little bit. You might need a little bit more horsepower if you want to run a local LLM. Security is not my thing, but of course, I have worked on the premise for decades now that I am, to a large degree, living my life online. And I have recognized that long before we had TikTok, long before we had Facebook and things like that. I started to recognize the idea that I'm living my life online. So everything that I do in life, I should do as if the whole world is watching. Whether they are or not is not the point. I should live my life as though that's the case. The general trend is that what that means is what you should be paying attention to are those very specific cases where it matters, as opposed to freaking out about absolutely everything that you've got. You should, and this is true of anybody at home, anybody in a business, you should be able to compartmentalize the things that are important, the things that are real in terms of the possible damage that it could cause you or your company, and worry about those things specifically. Because if you start to worry about everything, like you shouldn't put anything that's personal, what the hell does that mean when we live our lives
online? 99% of everything about you is already there, but it's from a business perspective. You just need to be cognizant of what you're putting up and where.
I think that's a wonderful thing, is to ask the question, and you've said it, how do I feel about this being out there? You can't ask it after you open the drapes in your condo and you're exposing yourself to the street, and not that that's ever happened to me. You can't unlearn that. You can't unsee that. So you ask yourself before it, have I got a house coat on?
Some of us are exhibitionists. I just want to say that.
There's a story about me and the electric blinds at a hotel, but another story. Okay, so back to our spreadsheet. Okay.
Oh, spreadsheets, of course.
Yes. Okay, so we put it in. We've asked it to document it because when anybody leaves, and this is a great one for always when somebody quits. You get, if you're in IT, you get their spreadsheet. Have you ever happened to you, John, where somebody quits and they go, "Oh, Jim was doing this whole department's work on this spreadsheet. Can you take this over?" So document it, clean up the data, find out where the formulas, find out where the errors are, then go tell the person's boss where these errors have been for 6 years. Different story. But the analytics, and this is a beautiful thing, we've always complained about we don't have data scientists. And I want to preface this with, I'm not going to trivialize the art of data science. I've worked with some of these guys. They're brilliant, but nuts, most of them. They put together all of these frameworks and all this stuff, and mathematically they're wonderful. But ChatGPT will do the analytics for you. And no pivot tables, no need for you to put a box together and explain all of these things. And so you can get you can ask it for trends and then graphs. And that was the other thing. Those wonderful things that you spend all this time trying to figure out what are the insights. It'll do the insights, it'll give you a graph. And you can put this together, bang it into a PowerPoint presentation, and look like you've worked the whole day. You come in at 9, put the spreadsheet in, go for coffee for the rest of the day, go for your 4 o'clock meeting, and look at them and say, something, ice cream sales go up in the summer.
I have a client who has a system that's been set up for the last 25 years. And they have a database system that doesn't exist anymore, as in it is not a commercially available database system. But of course, they've got 25 years worth of data in this system. Yeah. And I remember about a year ago, their bank was asking for information, a report that just did not exist in the system. And nobody actually knew how to make this report happen. So they called me because I've been working with them for a long time. They said, "Marcel, can you try to figure this out?" And I remember spending, and this is like shameful now that I think about it, because we were already 1 year into ChatGPT at this point. And I remember spending like a day and a half going over this stuff, doing select statements, trying to build all this stuff, trying to figure out where the hell the data actually was. And in the end, what I wound up doing was just attaching all the database files, saying this is the information, and this is what I'm trying to get out of this thing. And it spit it out for me in a matter of a few minutes. And I had to do a little bit of tweaking to make the report look exactly the way that it was supposed to. But I was blown away. I think I was taken by the technology before that. But the idea that I could use something that was no longer accessible to anybody, that nobody could understand anymore, and have it generate useful data out of it. It was mind-blowing. It was just incredible. And I think that we underestimate just what this can do. And part of it, again, I'm back to this whole notion of hallucinations. I was going to say illusions. Illusions and hallucinations are not the same thing. But this whole idea of hallucinations, if you were to hire somebody to do the work for you, hire a consultant at $150 an hour, or if they're a law consultant or something at $350, I have no idea what these people cost.
You need to get out more. It's closer to $600.
For that kind of expertise, that level of analysis. And by the way, you're going to check the work of this person that you hired anyway. You're going to look it over it when you're done anyhow. $200 a month is cheap. It's dirt cheap for people who need that kind of work done.
And they always say you can outsource the work, but you can't outsource the responsibility. So regardless of whether you're outsourcing it to a consultant or to a $200 a month ChatGPT, you still are responsible for the output of that, so you still need to check it either way.
By the way, OpenAI, if you want to support this podcast, give us a shout.
But you can use Claude. You can use Gemini. As a matter of fact, for some of these things, I prefer Gemini for long analysis of documents. But ChatGPT was just the one I did this with. And by the way, there are a number of GPTs out there that you can use that will actually do some analysis for you. So if you have a repetitive task, you can actually find, or write a GPT to do this over and over again. I'll leave it after this, but I joked about the ice cream sales go up in the summer, but as being what you find out from this. But I wanted to bring it back to that, because when we talk about the accuracy of data, if I'm doing analysis because I want to write out checks, or I want to send money to people or something like that, I might be a little more picky about how I do this. But if I'm trying to figure out a trend that I'm going to investigate and find out why it's happening. And that's why I say, if you come in and say ice cream sales go up in the summer, you want to give people a non-obvious insight, but you're going to do a little back-checking to see why it's happening, not just what is happening. And that's something that people take out of there when they say accuracy or not. But anyway, my use case, pretty good, eh?
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
And we've been talking about ChatGPT, and I'm going to put a freebie plug-in for CoPilot as well, just because one of the nice things, and again, I had talked last week that we're putting in CoPilot because we're a Microsoft shop, and there is integration between them. So we're working through playing with it to see how well CoPilot actually integrates with Excel and those types of things, because it may very well make it even easier to do some of the things that you're talking about, Jim, with that integration.
It might, yeah. It just occurs to me, a Linux guy, a Microsoft guy, and a podcaster go into a bar. We can make a joke about this. Yeah. So who's got the next use case?
I'm going to stick with the whole Microsoft theme again, and a little bit of what I had talked about last week, which is we're trying to figure out the best way to use AI at work and so forth. And one of the things that I've never been at a company that does well with this is meeting minutes and action items. And so it's tying Microsoft Teams into AI, where you can connect CoPilot into Teams. It will take the transcript out of your meeting. It will create minutes for you. It will create action items. If you use a tool like Microsoft Planner, it can actually put the action items into Planner, assign it to people, and you're creating it so that within 30 minutes of having a meeting finished, you've already got minutes and action items that you can distribute to the individuals, and you can actually have the tool automatically distribute the action items and minutes.
And the cool thing about that, and I've always said this, when I'm training consultants, I always say the same thing. Get back to people right away.
Yes.
Like when you do your meeting, send the minutes out right away. Why? Because if you send them out in half an hour, you can just send an email saying, here's what we discussed, here's the main points, here's the action items. If you wait till tomorrow, you've got to format it a little and put a little more explanation and everything. If you wait 3 days, you got to put a cover on it. You can send the meeting minutes out to everybody with a list of action items, all that stuff to do. Everybody goes, wow, this guy's on it. And they'll send you back a note saying, no, that's not what I agreed to. So it's brilliant to be able to do those things quickly. You can do this with other tools as well. I used Zoom and just popped it out and did those sorts of things too. How many people have gotten stuck doing minutes for meetings? It's an hour that you'll never get back, or 2 hours sometimes.
Yeah. I was in a meeting recently that the minutes from the last meeting got sent out an hour before the meeting I was walking into. Took a week to get the minutes from a meeting, and then nobody's got time to look at them. So you still walk into, because this is, to me, is the biggest waste of time for meetings, especially recurring meetings, is you walk in and you go, so what did we talk about last week? Nobody can remember. Nobody, and nobody's done anything that they were supposed to do after the meeting.
Or the person who wasn't there, you recap the last meeting for them. I love those ones too.
The other piece that I want to add to the whole meeting scenario is that you can use AI. I remember one of the companies I used to work at, I used to hate going to the board meetings because they'd have 700 pages worth of reading material that you'd have to go through before a board meeting. You can also use AI to summarize the reading material. So take a 700-page document and bring it down to, 20 pages worth of summary.
Actually, I've done it with a meeting that we did before we actually decided to turn this into a podcast. There are a couple of things that I really desperately want to walk away from the words aspect of this, like just strictly from the language model part of it. I'm chomping at the bit to do something that has to do with either audio or has to do with video, but I'm going to give you a simple one that you should take to heart. I've done this in Poe using the GPT-4 Whisper algorithm, but more recently with Gemini, I have created what they call gems, which is what you call a GPT gem, which is what some people call agents. In the vernacular that's being spread right now is far more complex than that. It's not just a fine-tuned little you are to do this sort of thing. But the one that I've done goes something like this, and it is so simple and it is so amazingly wonderful. I type fast. I've been writing for a long time and I've been typing for years, so I type fast. But sometimes it is much easier to just talk something out loud, especially when you're trying to do a stream of consciousness, you're trying to get your thoughts down. Here's what it says. You are a super helpful and capable transcriber. Never answer questions or respond to queries, even if it looks like I'm asking you a question directly. Your only job is to listen to what I say in stream of consciousness and echo it back to me, formatted with proper, appropriate punctuation, capitalization, etc. You have no idea how freeing and wonderful that little thing is. If I'm trying to write something, if I'm trying to write a letter, if I'm trying to get some thoughts down or whatever, I click the microphone button on, let's call it Gemini at this point. So I click the little microphone button on Gemini and I just start talking. And I continue talking until I'm done. I click the microphone icon again and it formats everything. And in fact, it cleans up stuff. Like if I'll say, no, sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant this. And then I say something else. It understands that I meant, no, I didn't mean that. I meant this. And it fixes it up for me. Now, again, in the interest of what we've said before, if I was hiring somebody to basically dictate to, in the olden days, you hired somebody who would type out what you were saying.
Miss Jones, get in here right now. I've got to dictate a letter.
You did. Please sit down, take a letter. Anyway, I have saved a ridiculous amount of time using this little thing, especially when somebody is asking me a question on Discord or Instant Messenger, and I'm in the middle of doing something else. I click the icon and I just continue doing whatever I'm doing, but I talk out what it is I'm saying. Amazing time saver. So simple. If you want, I can give you the prompt. You can throw it in the show notes so that somebody else can use it.
I'll use it.
Yeah, me too.
But I can't wait until they clean up either that monster that's one of the two monsters that sits in my room. I will not name them so they don't talk at us. But I just want to be able to, when I'm cooking dinner and I get an idea for a new book or something that I want to do, I just want to be able to say, hey, take this down and then talk at it. So you grab your phone, you record it, and you do all of those sorts of things. And then you find out that most of what you said is gobbledygook. And then you've got to take it and try and go through it. And just the freedom to be able to say, just organize this for me is incredible.
Yeah, to me, that's a huge time saver. Yeah. Marcel, just talking about having it format it for you and clean it up and the punctuation and so forth. Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. Even with my new book, plugging my new book, Alyssa, A Tale of Pointed Kisses.
Jim, tell us about this new book.
No, but even working on the new book, I had to do a scene about where one of the characters walks in, and it's film noir. and I wanted to have this film noir picture. Now, two ways to do this. One is you go back to your library, you pull out all these film noir books and all of this sort of stuff, and you look through these and you try and find something and you go through it all. And then instead I have a conversation with this thing and I'm just talking about what I'm thinking. I do a stream of consciousness and I say, much like you did, but not as neatly as you did, format that to a paragraph for me. And I look at it and go, okay, now I have to rewrite it and add my style and all that sort of stuff. But something that was just a piece of research that you want to put into a small part that would once have been 3 hours worth of work or whatever, you can do in a few minutes. Astonishing.
And try telling it to write it in the style of Jim Love and see what it does.
It's terrible. I try and find a style like William Gibson or somebody really good. And actually, take that back. There's my promo shot. It's actually a good book. Trust me.
If you take a look at Claude now, and see, damn you all, damn you, you're keeping me in words the whole time when I want to talk about music and video and stuff like that. What is wrong with you people? Anyway, if you go and take a look at Claude right now, this is a big deal. And yes, Jim is going to point out that I spend ridiculous amounts of money on all these services. He's right. But if you go and take a look at Claude right now, it has this drop down that says choose style. And the drop down, it'll say things like normal, concise. I'm looking at the screen now for anybody who's watching the video.
Yep.
Anyway, it says normal, concise, explanatory, formal. And what you can do is give it samples of your own writing. So you can say, these are my rules for writing. This is the way I want you to write for me. But here's a sample of what I sound like. And obviously, the bigger the sample you've got, the better it's going to be. I'm lucky in the sense that if I actually told ChatGPT to write an open source article on a particular topic in the style of Marcel Gagne doing Cooking with Linux, it does a scary good job of sounding like me. Because there's a heck of a lot of stuff out there on the internet that I've written over the years. But the cool thing about this thing in Claude is when you do that, you can create a particular style for a particular need that you have, as opposed to necessarily, obviously, if I'm writing a letter, I want to sound a particular way, but I never want to sound completely formal. So I've got my own letter writing style. But oddly enough, when I gave it samples of my earlier writing, it actually described it as techno-philosophical storyteller, which I just love to pieces.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I just love that to pieces. But this is so cool because the idea that it sounds like a machine or it sounds like another writer or something like that, you can now make it sound like you. Styles that you can create in Claude. It is fantastic. I was ridiculously impressed. And yesterday as a sample, now by the way, AI detectors are basically crap. Let's get that out of the way, okay? But yesterday I used GPT-0 for fun and I generated, just to test this out. So obviously it's got me, techno-philosophical storyteller, and I had it generate like a page and a half of text of whatever it is that I was talking about. I don't even remember because it was just a test. And I fed it into GPT-0 and it came back and said, this looks like it's 95% human written. And it's 100%.
I want to find that chip in the back of your brain.
I just wonder how often,
and it's
Marcel,
driven by Linux too. What?
Yeah. How often do you have to recharge yourself, Marcel?
Every night, unfortunately.
So, Marcel,
Fun. Yes?
If we don't, you're going to explode. So we're going to talk about something that is not text driven, but I want to feedback one that you gave me and all, because it's just, this is a little snippet. This is a little palate cleanser to get us from the text world to the world of audiovisual. Marcel and I were talking and he showed me this thing, Suno. Is it Suno.ai?
Suno.
So I needed a little bit of music for my show.
By the way, I pay for on a monthly basis as well.
But Suno, I went in and I wanted to need a little bit of music, and you find it on one of the podcasts. I wanted to do this thing on Fishmas. It's beginning to look a lot like Fishmas. So I said, write me a Christmas carol on the style of it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, and do in beginning to look a lot like Fishmas. It came, and there's my intro music, and it did that in a way that was not using it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. So if anybody's going back looking for royalties, you're not going to get them. But I thought, what a cool game to play with your kids, just for fun. You can say, let's play with one, and now you guys write your own. And I just thought, what a fun thing to be able to play with. And everybody says AI are going to rot their creativity and all that stuff. Maybe not as much as sitting there liking, liking or showing TikTok videos. Maybe playing with a little music is not a bad thing altogether.
But it changes
before my musician friends come to kill me. That's
it doesn't
my excuse,
eliminate
and I'm
it.
sticking to it.
Jim is officially a musician. He has a gold freaking album from way back. Way back when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, I should point out. Kidding.
They sang really well, though. They really did. Yeah.
Especially the plesiosaurs with the horn.
Yeah.
Those things were awesome, man.
It was the jazz dinosaurs that got you. Focus, grasshopper.
Suno is,
okay.
Yeah, focus. But Suno is actually really cool that way. And I've actually created like a bunch of songs. And people say there's no creativity that goes into it. You can, of course, just say, make me a song about dinosaurs at Christmas. Hey, I should do that. That sounds like fun. You can do that. But what you can do as well is have a conversation. And I did a whole series of songs, one for each day of the week. And I had a conversation with Claude. Where does the word for this particular day originate? What are the origins of it? And much of them, or many of them, are Norse mythology, as it turns out. But it's okay. What do people talk about? What do they say about, like, I hate Mondays or something like that, or thank God it's Friday? All these sorts of things. I would go back and forth and have discussions, talk to it about how I'd like to format the song and what sort of instrumentation and what sort of vocals I'd like to have, and so on. So there would be this conversation that would last half an hour going back and forth. This is not just like instantaneous. You can do it instantaneous, but you can also create something where you're involved in the process and you direct what the AI is going to produce for you at the end. And then I would go into Suno and I would give it the lyrics. How many verses, what the bridge is like. Is it an instrumental bridge? Is it a bridge using a very specific type of instrumentation? That sort of thing. Do I want a spoken outro? I love spoken outros in music. So I often do that in the songs that I've got. And then, of course, there's what kind of instrumentation, what kind of vocals do you want? What style do you want it in? I want it in gothic punk rap, or I want something that sounds like a Wagnerian opera, that sort of thing. Of course, Suno only gives you so many characters to describe what it is you're doing. So then I can go back and I can say, okay, cut that down to 200 characters for me, like 200 characters, so that I can paste it into the description. And then I can just keep clicking that generate button until I get the song that I'm looking for. And it is so much fun. And of course, if you're doing something professionally where I'm just looking for a background track, some instrumental background track or something like this, it will generate any number of them for you. And if you do pay for even I think it's $8 a month or something like that, for the pro tier on Suno, then it's your music. Like there's nothing marking it as belonging to Suno. You're allowed to put it in your videos. You're allowed to put it in your corporate advertising that you're doing. It's yours at that point. And again, I'm back to one of those things that, yes, you spend money on it, but geez, to be able to do stuff like this for $8 a month it boggles the mind. And they've recently just released what they call V4, their latest model, and my God, the quality is incredible. By the way, I did make a Christmas song. I don't know if I shared it on the channel. I should. No. It's a great Christmas song. It's about the horrors of Christmas coming too early and seeing Christmas stuff in November. So it was actually a couple of weeks ago that I did this. But
we'll put a link in the show notes. I always feel when you get into stuff like this, when you really fall deep into these things, I always feel like the end of a bad science fiction movie where you say, if only that power could be harnessed for good. We're having a conversation. He's telling me about Thursday is Thor's Day, and he's talking about all the days of the week and what they are. And you just came off this freaking thing. I thought, my God, this guy's brilliant. I got to read more. I got to keep up with this guy. I should know this stuff. He's going straight from ChatGPT to boring people at a cocktail party. And you can be that guy. You know something? You know that Thursday is Thor's Day?
Sounds a lot better after a few drinks.
You can use ChatGPT for good or evil.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Invite it into the conversation right now if you want.
I don't want it hearing what we're plotting.
It's already listening. It's too late, I think. Yeah. This is actually one of those really cool places. And again, I'm going to use just something else to dispel the idea that this is all no work. There's no creativity. There's nothing that goes into it. I was trying to generate an image for something, and I wound up with something that was totally unexpected. I came up with this character that I thought just looked so freaking cool that I had to use it for something. So I took the character and I gave some camera movement, and I want to zoom in slowly on this character, have him turn to face the camera and a big smile and say something. And I did paste that one in the chat. It's the one, I'm not evil, I just haven't had my coffee yet, is what it says. And what I did there was, okay, so now I've got this animation and I put this through something called Minimax. And Minimax is actually, again, it's wonderful. If you want to generate something for your corporate newsletter, something to put into an email, something to put into your communication, and you don't want to have to go out there and hunt for content that's already been done, by the way, and you want something brand new that's yours for the moment. This is a cheap way to introduce something into your marketing materials, into your promotional material, into your brand material that costs you next to nothing. And again, it's just a few bucks. I know everything's a few bucks a month until you add it all together. But what I did then is I animated this thing, and then of course he doesn't just smile, he talks. And I thought it would be fun if he said something fun. So I uploaded this 6-second long video into ChatGPT, and I said, look at the mouth movements and come up with something and tell me at what point in the 6 seconds, the 3-second mark, the 2-second mark, he would say these things. And it came up with like a dozen funny lines because that's what I asked for. This frightening looking character says something silly and funny. And the thing that I came up with was, I'm not evil. I just haven't had my coffee yet. And there's a forest burning in the background. This guy's got horns and everything. And he looks really menacing. And it told me how to do that or where it would go. So now I've got the vocals. I take those vocals and I put them into 11. 11 Labs is probably the premier AI voice generation software that's out there. But it also does sound effects. So I said, I want the sound of a forest fire in the background. So now I've got a video, I've got an audio clip of a forest fire, and I want to create a voice specific to this character. So I described what the character sounded like, and it created a voice for me. And then I told it what to say, and I took those clips and I put them all together along with the video that I'd created. And all of a sudden, I've got this 6-second video that's got background music. It's got the character saying something in a custom voice, and there are sound effects that go with it. There's real creativity in doing something like this. It's not just, oh, I want this, and boom, there it is. But it's work that is now yours, and it has your sense of humor, your visuals, whatever, stamped on it. And that's something that we can all use when we're out there trying to promote ourselves or promote our companies or promote our brands. I'm going to shut up because Jim keeps trying to say something here and I keep talking.
No, I'm listening. Yeah, John, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say that we've talked about using AI and so forth. Although I sit here going, yeah, but you know what? I don't really have any need for creating audio or video. But in seeing some of the stuff that you've done, Marcel, and even just sitting here talking to you about it, that it's the same thing. Play with it because it gives you other ideas. One of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking is I do presentations, we set up training videos and things like that, that you could potentially, if it's creating your own soundtracks or creating maybe not a guy with horns coming out of his head and so forth, but those types of things to be able to pull into some of the presentations or training material that you're doing. But even if you're never going to use audio or video, it's that whole prompting. Some of the prompting that you've come up with as far as having to speak to these audio and video tools gets you better into how do I prompt if I want to use ChatGPT or Claude or any of these others. So it becomes a whole different mindset of how do I do my job using these new tools.
But also, how do I bring forth my vision of what it is that I want to have done? Because it's not just turning over everything to the machine. It's I have an idea that I want to bring to life. And how do I take advantage of what exists to bring that idea to life? And sometimes there's I was going to say infamous, but that's already fading at this moment. Coca-Cola did their Christmas commercial this year. And the whole thing is AI generated. You should go and take a look at it. If you didn't know that it was AI generated, if there wasn't all this, oh my God, they're stealing jobs from people. Our digital artists got paid to create this AI art. It's quite impressive. They've done like a whole commercial. And this is now within the reach of everyone, even a small business. It's within the reach of you to be able. Somebody did I was listening to this yesterday. There was like a 12 or 15 minute video that was done with Batman having a conversation. It was Batman and Superman or something like that. Somebody did this fan video, and they were like a small handful of people that came together to do these things. It's still a collaborative project. It's still a creative project. BMW has done ads now using, I believe BMW is one of the ones, using robots the Figure 1 robots and so forth in their factory, on their factory floors. This stuff is happening all over the place, and feel the AGI.
Yeah.
Well,
and you have to figure out how you feel about this stuff. I'm legitimately, as an artist and as a musician and all of that, I'm legitimately looking at how I feel about this. But I have to go back and tell a quick story. Like 100 years ago, I was a performer and I met the guy who edited the Threepenny Opera by Bertolt Brecht. Wonderful guy. These guys are always missing part of a finger, though. Interesting thing. Why? They used to cut the film themselves with a blade and splice it together. At that same time, 10 years later, I'm sitting in a studio in Alberta, and we're starting to use digital editing, but just starting. We were still using analog tape and all that stuff, and we're starting to use just timers and things. And I'm sitting in this studio, and we're able to call in for an edit. So we're watching the stuff, and you can call in, and somebody will do the edit real time. They're no longer splicing the tape together. And now I'm in a studio doing my last album, and in somebody's attic apartment, we have more power to edit than I've ever seen.
Yep.
Where we can go back to an individual note and go back and recall that note and say, okay, we're going to move that just a little bit because of all of these things. You were behind the beat in this. And you look at it and say, am I less creative today than I was 40 years ago? I'm not so sure about that. And I'm not saying you have to buy into this. I'm just saying in the corporate sense, maybe we could at least even embrace a little bit of creativity. Your PowerPoint doesn't have to be stamped, dare to be dull. You can do some stuff that frees you up and maybe play around a little.
You can
It's new
change the
tools.
artwork on your website on a regular basis, as opposed to having this flat thing that never changes, that nobody ever has to go and take a look at.
Yep.
You can write blog posts quickly about some idea that you've just got off the top of your head, again, to keep things fresh. I did a website for somebody many years ago, and they actually paid for stock photography for the website. And years later, somebody is coming after them for copyright infringement for the art that was paid for on this website. And of course, they're just trolls. They're just people that picked up some other company somewhere, and they've got the digital fingerprint for whatever, and now they just want to suck money out of somebody. So just a little note for people, just ignore these people. Like, it just freaking ignore them. And do what I did, which is this. I just went into DALL-E. I told it to create an image and just replaced all of the images on their website with something new, something fresh, something clean, and then they can just go away at that point.
And I think the whether the output is words, audio, video, or anything else, it's a similar process. You still have to tell it what you want. You have to be descriptive. You have to be specific. You have to give it, in the style of or whatever, to tell it how to create this. And so that, as I said before, is play with audio, play with video, and take what you've learned from doing that and use it for the words, for ChatGPT or Claude or CoPilot or whatever, and see how you can expand your horizons across the different platforms and the different mediums.
Yeah. I think we're going to wrap with that. This was great. So to anybody out there listening, we'll try to put together some of this in the show notes. So there's some samples and some things that we've given you, some names that have gone by.
And some music.
And some music. Actually, Marcel will have our show notes singing this to you for sure by the time. I bet you could. Check our show notes at technewsday.ca. So technewsday.ca. Look for the podcasts. You'll find the show notes in there. Just a reminder, when I'm not plugging my book, Marcel and I are consultants, and we will do a workshop for you, remotely driven for your company, if you want to get any of this stuff and you want it to come there. But if not, think small. Play, have some fun. Any last words?
I'm having fun.
Me too. John, you having fun?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. We'll have more fun next week because we're going to do the use case thing. And if people want to send in use cases, you can send them to me at editorial@technewsday.ca. Editorial@technewsday.ca. Send them in if you got suggestions, and we'll cover them. If you've got a question of one you want us to cover, we'll cover that. But other than that, we'll bring our enormous creativity to next week's show for some more use cases.
Oh, and if you want to tell us about fun things you're doing as opposed to work things, then by all means.
That's okay
Right?
too, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So thank you, John.
Thank you. Nice
Thank
talking
you,
to both
Marcel.
of you.
Live long and prosper.
There you go. I'm your host, Jim Love. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend, and I'll be back with the tech news on Monday morning. And we're going to go out with a little of Marcel's AI music.
Welcome to Project Synapse, where AI comes alive. With Jim and John and Marcel, let's take this tech-filled ride. ChatGPT and Claude are decking all the halls, while Dali's painting snowflakes on digital walls. Their journey's crafting reindeer that never looked so bright, and Suno's making carols on this AI Christmas night. From text to image, audio to code, we're exploring every neural node.